أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم نور قلوبنا واشرح صدورنا بنور القرآن والإيمان والإسلام اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eid Mubarak everyone. Inshallah, we will continue our discussions on the miraculousness of Quran, and just to confirm that you can all hear me well and you can also see the text on the screen. Is that right? I'm using a different computer operating system today, so things might be.
Assalamu alaikum, Birkan. Yes, I can hear you and I can see a screen.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you very much. Okay, let's start, inshallah. And this is, as you would all remember, we are studying the 25th word. This is first light, third ray. And under third ray, this, the second something, let me check, sorry. Second radiance. Yes, 25th word, first light, third ray, and second radiance. And the second radiance is about the freshness, youth of Quran, and how the principles explained in Quran, how principles given to humankind as guidance are applicable to any human being in any time period. So it is applicable to today, it will be applicable tomorrow, and it was applicable yesterday. So that's the idea. And now we are studying another example of it, which is under subsection third degree. Let's start, inshallah, if you don't have any immediate thoughts, questions before we start reading the text. Okay. So there's something wrong with my screens. Sorry. I apologize. Okay. Ya Allah. Third degree of thousands of matters, we shall point out only 3 or 4 by way of example. So we will give some 3 or 4 examples, author says. Since the Quran's principles and laws have come from pre-eternity, they shall go to post-eternity. They are not condemned to grow old and die like civilization's laws. They are not condemned to grow old and die like civilization's laws. So with the previous sentence, when it says, since the Quran's principles and laws have come from pre-eternity, they shall go to post-eternity. I have a very simple understanding about that part, which is since the revelation, the speech is coming from the creator of the universe, the absolute creator of the universe, which is not bounded by time. And since speech is for the entire humanity who's living and who will live in any time, then the speech shouldn't or must not have an expiration date. That's what I understand. And the third sentence actually explaining that regard, and it says, they are not condemned to grow old and die like civilization's laws. Most of our human-made, quote unquote, laws, they have some expiration dates, right? They are best before something. They are always young and strong. Quran's principles are always young and strong. For example, despite all its societies for good works, all its establishments for the teaching of ethics, all its severe discipline and regulations, civilization has been unable to contest the all-wise Quran on two of its matters, and has been defeated by them. These two matters are: be steadfast in performing the prayers and give zakat. This is from Surah Baqarah, second Surah, and 43rd verse. And the second one is God has permitted trade and forbidden usury. And usury it's interest, like having interest, riba, in your trade. And this is from Quran, again, Surah Baqarah, at the almost very end, ayat 275. We shall describe them, this miraculous victory, by means of an introduction. It is like this. So he's talking about two principles, which are part of two ayahs. One is giving zakah, charity, or I guess charity wouldn't do the right justice to the word zakah, but I don't know any other word to translate. Giving some of your belongings, or what you are given as a bounty from your Lord, to others in need, And the second one, do not have any trade which includes any kind of interest. Interest in this context meaning, the paying more than you borrowed, or vice versa. As is provided in Isharatul Ijaz, it's another text from the same author, just as the source of mankind's revolutions. So revolution may mean something good, positive, but here in this text is something negative, corresponding to conflict between people, conflicts in societies, like civil wars. Okay. Just as the source of mankind's revolutions is one phrase, so another phrase is the origin of all immortality. So authors is saying that I can summarize the mankind's revolutions with one sentence, and I can also summarize all immortality with another sentence, he says.
Immorality.
Sorry. Immorality, yes. Did I say immortality?
Yes.
Okay. Immorality, thank you. As an expert, first phrase, so long as I am full, as long as I am full, what is it to me if others die of hunger? I don't care about others. And the second phrase, you work so that I can eat. or I can benefit. So these are two phrases, author says, summarizing actually our society and explaining why we have all these conflicts in society, all these clashes, and also all these immorality that we experience. Yes, the upper and the lower classes in human society, that is the rich and the poor. Of course, you can, define upper and lower classes in different ways as well, like intellectuals and people, illiterate people, or whatever, the ways you can think of. But most of the time, it's rich and poor. The upper and the lower classes in human society, that is the rich and the poor, live at peace when in equilibrium. The basis of that equilibrium is compassion and kindness in the upper classes, compassion and kindness in upper classes, and respect and obedience in the lower classes. Now, the first phrase has incited the upper classes to practice oppression, immorality, and mercilessness. So instead of compassion and kindness, author says, what we have in our society is that upper class has oppression, immorality, and mercilessness. And just as the second has driven the lower classes to hatred, envy, and to contemn the upper classes. So instead, in the lower classes, instead of respect and obedience, now we see hatred, envy, and condemn. I don't know what is the noun form of condemnation, maybe, the upper classes. And all these have negated man's tranquility for several centuries. So too this century, as a result of the struggle between capital and labor, it has been the cause of the momentous events of Europe, well known by all. He is referring to, the conflicts between capital and labor, many civil wars, some revolutions in Russia and other Eastern European countries. But for us, I guess this clash between poor and rich still exists, of course. Thus, together with all its societies for good works, all its establishments for the teaching of ethics, all its severe discipline and regulations, it couldn't reconcile these two classes of mankind, nor could it heal the two fearsome wounds in human life. The Quran, however, eradicates the first phrase with its injunction to pay zakat. The first phrase was, I'm full, I'm rich, who cares about the others? Who cares about the hungry people? So Quran eradicates this phrase by zakat and heals it, while it uproots the second phrase, which was, I'm trying to remember, let's look. You work so that I can eat. Okay. Seeing my work as a benefit for others. Okay, this is how I see it, according to this verse. And while it uproots the second phrase with its prohibition on usury and interest and cures that. So to be honest, I don't understand this very well, how forbidding interest in trade eradicates or uproots this second phrase. Let's continue, maybe it will become clearer with your comments. Indeed, the Quranic verse stands at the door of the world and declares usury and interest to be forbidden. It reads out its decree to mankind, saying, in order to close the door of strife, close the door of usury and interest. It forbids its students to enter it. So in the original, let me see, it is actually more a little bit more controversial, because it doesn't only say close the door of usury and interest, it says actually close the door of banks, and then in parentheses say interest. So as if author is suggesting that this verse is against banking system, not only interest, including interest, but the banking system. If you want to end the fight in the original, you should close the door of banks, and then in parentheses interest. Okay, that's the first part. So if we go back, author says there are two principles given to mankind in Quran. One is zakat, charity, and then the other one is interest, usury. And author here is saying that these principles may seem to have some historical backgrounds, and maybe they were good only at certain time period within a certain context, but actually the author says they still have their freshness, and their freshness is so obvious that after all these different developments in our civilization, in our society, still what we try to put instead of like how we try to replace them ended up with misery, with terrible conflict. And so two concepts, forbidden usury and giving zakat, are still alive, and they should be followed as they were followed before. And I see Yusuf's hand raised. Jazakallah khairan, Yusuf. Let's listen to you.
So I'm trying to understand what is zakat, what is usury, why is usury bad, why is interest bad? Like definitely has consequences, as the author is talking about, like in the physical world we see the outcome of it, but what is the basis of it? Likewise, what is the basis of zakat, that it ends up giving this good result? It is pretty much like, for example, if I pretend to be a good guy, but if I don't have the basis for being a good guy, I can only pretend so long. Like eventually it's going to become very clear to you that I'm pretending, I'm making it up. So there must be something in the zakat and also in usury and being against usury which is inherently going to lead to these good results and bad results, respectfully. So very quickly, I guess people already know, but just to remind myself also, so zakat is cleansing, as the word itself indicates, cleansing of my wealth. Cleansing it of what? Cleansing of the idea that I own it. So because the owner of the property says it's not yours, give portion of it to that needy person. I am the one that gave it to you in the first place. And now I would like you to give that portion of it as a signature of you yourself realizing and confirming that it doesn't belong to you. You take it and give it to the other person. So this is leading to the idea that I am now starting to become more thoughtful about other person, because I am becoming equivalent to the poor person. I am as poor as that poor person now, because I am being given by the creator, and the same creator wants to give to that other person through me. So I'm no different really from the other person. So inherently, if I can, or to the extent that I give zakat, truly, I would reach to an understanding that I am no different than this poor person in terms of wealth. We are both created beings. We are both being provided 24/7. And my creator is inviting me to be merciful to my fellow brother or sister. So long as I am full, what is it to me if others die of hunger, is inherently having the idea that I owned money, or I worked hard, I earned money, I earned my title or whatever. And as long as I'm full and I hold this capital, I'm good. It's mine and it keeps me alive, and that's all I care about. The other guys, they should have worked and earned. I don't care. Or even if I inherited that money from anywhere, it doesn't matter. I take it as a status for myself. It is my property, my money. So this is why the first phrase is inherently having this idea that I own power, wealth, and whatever. And if you extrapolate this, it's not hard to see that it also means I am owning my youth, I am owning my health. And if I see a person who is afflicted with a disease or hunger or any sort of a problem, I would say it's their problem. Since I don't have that problem, I am good. But the second one is interesting. Like usually, what's wrong with it? Because this, the verse that he says is, God has permitted trade and forbidden usury. Because within the context of this verse, the unbeliever mindset is arguing against this and saying that, well, trade is like usury. But the verse is then, as a follow-up to this claim, says that no, God has permitted trade and forbidden usury. So what's the difference between trade and usury? This is what I'm trying to understand here. So let me stop here and see what you think about that, because still, if I keep talking, it's going to be talking while thinking. So let me see what is your take for this difference between trade and usury, and what is the underlying idea, as in the zakat example, that would make usury evil and trade holding some bits and pieces of belief in it, but usury being contrary to the belief. So I would be interested to hear that, inshallah.
Thank you. So your definition of zakah, cleansing, is interesting. The way it equates the rich and poor, of course, in the eyes of the creator. I don't know if this phrase makes any sense, but like it is interesting. It is different compared to what we used to hear, right? In our society, the charity is there so that either, in the best form, to help people. Some people are unfortunate. They are not as lucky as we are. Hence, it is our moral responsibility to help poor, to help people in need. So this is kind of an external rule that we prefer to follow. Like you don't have to give charity, but if you give charity, you feel good and you feel as you fulfilled something necessary out there. Or in more common, I guess, forms, charity is there so that the poor will not attack you as a rich person. You somehow secure yourself, secure your life by giving away a certain amount. And most of the times you don't even give away in real sense, you just pretend as if you are giving away, just like all these big companies do, right? They pretend as if they are giving away to certain social causes, but in reality, we know that they're just either helping themselves with taxes or spending money as a means of marketing. The companies that destroy the nature most now have all these pledges to save nature. So anyway, but you say that the zakah is actually the acknowledgement that whatever I assume to hold, assume to own, is actually does not actually belong to me. So it is given to me for certain purposes, and these purposes include distributing it to other people who are in need as well. So this is part of the deal already. I am given this wealth, and this a part of this trade, that giving is distributing a certain amount to other people. So I am obliged to do it. It's part of the wealth, definition of the wealth. Abdulaziz, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yeah, I like that concept a lot, that we give zakat for ourselves before it goes to others. That makes a lot of sense. What I find, and this may be not the point of the discussion, but what I find always kind of confusing is the kind of obvious financial aspect of zakat and riba. I forgot what's called in English. And it makes to me a lot of sense in non-financial aspects, like in dealing like with others. Generally, as someone has told me before, may include zakat itself, or at best it's a form of bay'ah, trading, or it may include also riba, as obviously we see in our life, especially professional life, and maybe also personal life. There is riba as well. When it comes to the financial aspect, I'm sure it makes a lot of sense, but the logistics of it seem, at least, or maybe the right way, maybe the infrastructure of that are not in a place, because I get the feeling, and I'm no expert, that the fiqh of zakat and riba is is all over the place. Like it seems to me that you can find whatever fatwa you would like to get in anything to get you a halal riba. Like I can guarantee you, if you want a car loan with a 25% interest, I can give you a very respect. Also, I'm not trying to make fun of the expert who would give you the fatwa, but I'd find you a very respectable one who will give you the fatwa and will tell you that go for it, that it's okay. So
let's talk after the discussion. I may need such.
okay, definitely.
Just kidding. Go ahead.
But yes, this aspect of it is confusing for me. And I don't know, I don't want to give more examples, but there are a lot of examples of that in every direction. And it makes a situation which already is a hard situation with riba, especially as most of us live here, it makes the situation more confusing. But at the personal level, like in dealing with people, there is definitely clear trading and clear riba and clear zakat. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, Jazakallah khair. I really see your point, understand your point, and hear your point. It is true. Like if we look from a mechanistic point of view and talk about the fiqh of it, or let's say the rules in the social interactions, things may get a little confused or complicated. That's for sure. So what maybe we should try to do first to ease our job there is try to understand the concept of riba or concept of zakah, as Yusuf also suggested. And it is same with charity as well, zakat as well, right? Things get complicated. Once we try to apply it in our practical lives, things may get complicated, especially when we have a tension, like we experience a tension between current societal norms and Quranic norms. To me personally, it might be different for everybody else. Such conflicts, such complications in practical life are usually caused, at least again to me, so take it personal please, such complications are usually caused by the tension between societal norms that I don't want to give away. I cannot abandon that easily. The norms that are imposed on me by the civilization, by my family, my friends, by the system that I live in, and the norms or guidance given by Quran. When I have tension between the two, when I try to fit Quranic guidance into current societal norms and have a version of this guidance which would be acceptable by today's civilization, then I most of the time have these complications. But when I say, yes, I might be living in this society, but if something is wrong, it's wrong. And Quranic guidance giving me an alternative, showing me an alternative, whether I can live it or not, whether I can, accept it or not, but the alternative is there. And I prefer to follow this alternative. When I have this mindset, most of the times, the complications are not there anymore. Again, this is what happens with me. So again, like going back to our topic of charity, so one may argue that in today's society, in our civilization, things are pretty good without charity, without zakah. because zakah is more than charity, right? Because when we say charity is completely, almost completely volunteer, voluntary. But when it comes to zakah, there is an obligatory part that you have to give away a portion of your wealth. So one may argue that, our civilization is working pretty well without this obligation. Why should I give away my wealth? Even there are some theories in the economics in which the idea is, as you get wealthier and wealthier, as you get richer and richer, as you accumulate more sorry, capital around a single center, it will benefit the other people as well in the society through your investments, through your the opening new job markets and so on and so forth. There are such theories in which charity, especially obligatory charity, doesn't have any place. So things get complicated when we try to have this guidance from Quran, but try to fit it to our current society. Yusuf, please go ahead.
So it looks like with the zakat, the creator is taking ownership from human and attributing it to himself, ownership of wealth. So if you think about, let's say, capitalism, your capital is yours, ownership belongs to you. Communism says, no, it doesn't look good. So let us, because this is going to lead to fight and imbalance in distribution of wealth, let's take the ownership of wealth from the individual and attribute it to the state, which is being run by humans and their greed. So it didn't work either. So what Quran is suggesting is to take, which is the case actually, take wealth or the ownership from human and attribute it to the creator. And name of this is called zakat. And once you accept this, once you admit that this is the case, then all the problems about wealth distribution, because it's not a matter of distribution of the wealth, but the classes or the titles that comes with wealth. This is what caused the hatred or the fights among people. Superiority that comes with the wealth. But once you attribute wealth to the creator, rich also becomes as slave of a god as a poor person is. So there is no class difference in this case. This is why the first one, by commanding of zakat, it's simply as, this is, I guess, the simplest way I can see of it, take the ownership from the individual and give it to the creator. And this solves the problem. When it comes to the usury, the structure of the verse is very interesting because the verse says, the previous part of this verse, it says, الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقوم إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا. So they eat or they consume, I'm skipping the very, very beginning part of the verse, but they are consuming interest. And as a consequence of this, or as a justification of this, they say trade is like usury. And you guys say trade is good, usury is bad, but they're pretty much the same thing. Like if I am owning if I have wealth, if I have some capital, I open up a shop, I buy something for $10, I sell it to you for $12. So it's the same property, nothing has changed, but you say it's okay. But if I'm giving my money to you and I'm not I mean, lending my money to you, shall I just wait and 3 months later you gave me $10 back? Or, well, I could have earned money in this interval. I mean, why? So it's very understandable that mindset would argue that if I were to do trade with this money, I was going to earn $2. Now I lend the money to you, you worked, and you gave me $2. I don't know how much you made profit. Maybe you did $5 profit. I'm not going to take $5 from you. Just give me my $2. It sounds like similar. But Quran's counter argument is interesting. It says, God has permitted trade and forbidden usury. Like the goodness or badness in here is being attributed to, again, God permitting one and forbidding the other. Like there is a wisdom behind this, but even before getting to the wisdom part of it, again, in this one, it is saying that the Creator is saying that I define what is right and what is wrong. I define what is good, what is bad, not you. So, because then in some place, as Birkan was saying, some rulers would come up with a theory saying that it is good to collect capital in a few big names. It sounds fine to us. And to our theory, it's going to be better to, since these big names, big shots will open up good, make good investments. So let's support this idea. They define what is good. But the Creator in here is saying, no, I am the one who defines what is good and what is bad. So I guess before even going to the wisdom behind why such a thing is permitted and such a thing is forbidden, just the very fact that God permitting one and forbidding the other is saying that when it comes to earning wealth, you are not on your own. You cannot decide on your own. The one who gives you life, the one who gives you the ability to work and everything, is the one who is going to define how you would earn. This mindset, putting the Creator as the ruler in there, is going to save me from transgressing. Because otherwise I would say, I say so, I have wealth, whatever I say is the right, would become the new rule, which practically is the case nowadays. Whoever supports more presidential candidates, eventually laws go along their wishes. This is why big companies, big shots are explicitly supporting or lobbying for, like in the Congress. But putting the Creator as the ruler in here, I think, is the starting point of solving the problem. So this is the first part. Just it is commanded, and the commander being the Creator in here solves a huge problem. But apart from that, what is different in usury than trade? Like now I'm starting to talk about the wisdom part of it. Previously, I was trying to make a point about the command part of it. When it comes to the wisdom part of it, I feel like in trade, when I do trade, it's not really guaranteed if I'm going to earn, like I bought something for $10. Yeah, I put a price tag for $12 in there, but it's not clear if somebody is going to come and buy it or not. And actually, once I was traveling with a lawyer, I was traveling and the lawyer ended up sitting next to me. So he said, like lawyers, they speak a lot. He spoke a lot. I was the listener throughout the journey. So he said, no matter where you go on earth, you will see that the trading people and the farmers are the religious people. But when it comes to like the government officials, you will see them, they are the liberal, less religious or irreligious people. And his reasoning was, he made an observation. He was saying that the traders and farmers are 1 year, 1 day they earn, the following day they don't earn. It's not really clear if they're going to get money that day. So this is why they know where the money is coming from. They say God gives. If God gives money to us today, if God gives us a good corp this year, we are going to earn it. If not, we don't. But when it comes to, he says, government officials, their salary is fixed. They're going to get it at the end of the month. So they start taking the government as their provider. And this is why they're replacing God with something else. So I'm seeing a similar pattern in here. I mean, right or wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong. So in trade, from a wisdom perspective, so I'm attempting, as if opening my hands to the creator, saying that, oh, my creator, I would like to, I'm seeking for sustenance, and this is my supplication, physical supplication, if you like. I put up these things in here. I pay $10 to them, but I'm expecting $12. But unless and until you send me a customer, I'm not going to earn anything. But in usury, I am saying that I am guaranteeing my income, as if, as it's very commonly said, money begets money. I am saying that I have capital and I'm going to get $12 at the end of this month, no matter what. And I don't care its consequences to others. So this is why a usury in its design, and if the guy doesn't give me $12 1 month later, I'm going to run after him. I'm going to confiscate all his wealth and whatever. So I don't care. I just want my $12. So it's risk-free relative to the trade, but also in trade, there is a way for me to get to know my creator, but in usury, money becomes the source of money, not the creator becomes the source of money. So inherently, it is again closing the door to me to find my sustainer, my provider. And this is why I guess from a wisdom point of view also, trade is leading to the creator, but usury is preventing me to reach my creator.
Jazakallah khairan. That's another interesting way of looking at. And I guess we can apply this logic, this notion of usury or interest to anything in our lives, right? Let's say, make a favor for you, and then I feel good in return. So this is my price. This is the salary, or however you call it, as I receive. For doing good, I receive the fee of feeling good. But then I say, no, that's not enough. I want more. So other party has to thank me. Other party, the one that I helped, has to feel my superiority because I was able to help him instead of the other way around. So I guess usury also has this aspect of not being what is the word? Sorry, satisfied, not being content with the value you are given, and you asking for more. In most of our interactions, the values that we have or we gain, it's determined by external factors. And as Yusuf was saying, it's determined by God. We make a trade, and what we earn in return, people would say, determined by the economical system or determined by free market, whatever, but definitely it's not us. So what value I gain, it's determined by God. It's given to me. But when it comes to interest, I think I can determine the value. I can say, no, when I do this, in return, I will get that. So I'm determining the value. I'm deciding the value. Also, another aspect, when it is applied to, let's say, the loans, it's not even a loan anymore. Because a loan in a Quranic wisdom, Quranic guidance, is given as a result of recognition of the true owner. I loan what I borrow what I I lend what I find myself having the wealth to someone who is in need, because I think, that's the transaction my creator wants me to do. And in return, my wealth will be given back to me. So I don't lose anything. I even gain a lot by recognizing the true owner. That's the loan in Quranic wisdom. But loan, as it's defined in our society, is something you give and in return get something more. It's the recognition is definitely not there, because you treat it as your own property. You even decide how much gain you will have in return, and you put the other party in a terrible situation, also preventing him or her to recognize the true giver, because they are in debt now. They are not in a good situation. Their need is not satisfied. They have to pay more. They have to pay back more. So they are in a bad situation. There is nothing to be thankful. So it prevents the recognition of the true owner for both parties. But when it comes to loan from a Quranic perspective, you give someone who is in need whatever you have, and in return they give you back the same amount. And even, look at the extreme, look at the difference. In Quran it says, if they are not in a position to give it back, it is better to forgive them. So that's the difference. It was not your wealth that they, from the first, in beginning anyway. So I guess there's a huge difference between trade as defined in Quran and usury as again defined in Quran. And the biggest difference, as Yusuf also pointed out, is whether it's a means of recognizing your Lord, your creator, your sustainer, or denying it. There is no between. Any other comments? Any other questions? Suhail, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Another takeaway from trade versus usury is that trade sort of reflects the activity or act of creation, the will of God, in that trade is like human activity or economic activity, and that's what's taking place in existence. Every moment's a new moment. It's like the activity or sort of, the will of God, the act of creation that is always new and always taking place. There is no sort of, kind of as Yusuf pointed out, there is no stagnation, which is what like usury essentially is, because nothing is actually happening in reality. There is no activity. It's you lend out $1 and you get $2 back. There is no activity inherent to that transaction in and of itself. For and it's not necessarily one party maybe takes a loan and does some sort of economic activity, but both parties involved. So as Yusuf pointed out, both are on equal footing, the lender and the lendee, the one being lent to. There is no distinction. Hence, as he says here, there's no distinction between upper and lower class. Because the point in trade is not trade in and of itself, but as was pointed out, to see sort of the manifestation of God's qualities in that work for both individuals involved, let's say in a transaction, and then also because of the indeterminate nature of what's going to happen, let's say reaping a harvest or making a sale, reliance is through that uncertainty, there is reliance or certainty in the reliance upon God. So that's like another aspect I thought about. And when one in a usurious system, it's interesting in that all the economic activity or labor, so to speak, falls on quote unquote like the lower class or working class, whereas very little, if any, activity falls on the upper class or the one lending to, let's say, the banking sector or those in high finance. They aren't really doing anything, so it's as if they become God themselves. They are the masters. They are like Pharaoh, and that's how you have class distinction. So it's interesting, like I listen to people talking, especially nowadays, where there is a big distinction in class and so many unfathomable wealth among certain group of people, or concentrated in a few people in the world. It's talking about class distinction and how there's certain classes or the working class needs to work together, or there needs to be this and that. But as was said previously, that doesn't really address the underlying problem. There is no discussion about, well, what is the point of wealth accumulation to begin with? Or what is the point of trade to begin with? Or what does it even mean for there to be a different class to begin with? And what's the point of that? What does any of that mean? So, in other words, God is or has no relevance in that paradigm. There's no discussion about God at all. Period. Nothing. It's focused on wealth and not about God. And that's what happens, whether it's capitalism, socialism, Marxism. It's irrelevant. It's all the same because it has nothing to do with the creator. And therefore, what is man's position before the creator? And therefore, what is man's relationship supposed to be with the rest of creation, including fellow human beings?
Jazakallah khairan, this is extremely important. Like if our equations, if our interpretation of the reality relies on the creator, starts with the creator, or includes at least the creator, versus they're not including the creator at all, makes a huge difference. Like if, as a religious person or not, doesn't matter. If we think our purpose in life is to have a good life, having certain amount of wealth, health, a place to live in, cars to drive, children to, play with or be proud of, and the food to eat. If this is the life for us, if this is the purpose, then I spend that amount of time on earth, and these are the things that I am supposed to do. So that's the point. If we live it that way, then the guidance from Quran, let's be honest, it doesn't make much sense. It would cause at best some contradictions, some conflicts in our mind. So if I am supposed to, if that's the point of living, if I am supposed to provide the best house, let's say, for my family, if I'm supposed to have the best job with the best salary and have the best health or best health insurance in our country, if I'm supposed to eat the best food, then prohibition of usury doesn't make any sense, because I cannot get the best house or best food without usury. If the point is to have the best job with the best salary, again, usury, the prohibition of usury doesn't make any sense, because most of the jobs that I would select would rely on the concept on usury. So if our goals, our purpose, if our outcome, the end goals, and the way we begin with, how we see the life, is not about our understanding, our recognition of the Creator. It's not about developing ourselves as a servant. It's not about knowing all the names of my Creator, seeing the manifestations of the Creator. The point is not worship. Then the guidance from Quran doesn't make any sense, at least much sense. Let's be honest. But if, on the other hand, if we realize that the point in this life is knowing my Creator as a sustainer, as a trade maker, I'm just calling names that I experience in life, not necessarily written in Quran. If the point is to realize how my God gives me the health, the wealth, then the means, the ways that the Quran forbids, or the ways Quran permit, then they make sense. I wouldn't complain when I am sick, for instance, because it's another means of knowing my Creator giving me health. When I'm deprived of health, that I don't have health, and I know that the decision it's not mine. It is my Creator who can give me health or not. It's even a better way of knowing the health giver. So I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't complain when I don't have the biggest wealth, because it would probably prevent me to knowing the real owner of the God, of the wealth. So depending on the purpose of life as I see, depending on the meaning of life as I see, I would have or wouldn't have conflicts in my practical life, trying to follow the guidance of Quran versus trying to fulfill the obligations as imposed on me by the current civilization. So we have around like a 15 minutes. I don't want to go to the second part because we wouldn't have enough time, and also it's very controversial. So I want to leave it to Yusuf next week, inshallah. Yusuf, please go ahead.
So I was thinking of another way of earning wealth, which is gambling, which is also forbidden. Like in a similar line of thought, gambling is also having the idea of chance in it, and saying that with a such and such probability, I might win that money or whatever. And well, maybe I am lucky and I'm going to earn it. So again, it is very much contradicting to the idea that every single moment, every single thing is being created, is being chosen by an all-wise creator. So I guess this is why, if I am hoping to get something out of chance rather than, as Suhail was pointing to, relying on my creator as the source, again, it is preventing me from reaching my creator and the purpose of my existence. What is the point of being in this existence? And also, I would like to, I mean, you also emphasized, but on my end, I would also like to emphasize Suhail's point about what's the point of earning wealth at the end of the day. Because it is really interesting how like the whole humanity is fighting with each other, because, I mean, you cannot stop. Your enemies are producing wealth, producing weapons. So you need to produce wealth, you need to produce weapons to protect yourself. Or there's a competition, I mean, forget about at the state level. It is in your job. Like there's a crazy competition among your peers. You're just trying to save the day, but saving the day means you need to do as much work as they do. So it becomes like a chase. We are chasing something, we don't know what we are chasing, but stopping and asking, what was the point of all of these in the first place? I guess it looks like we never do that. And as Suhail's question was, what is the point of getting wealth? What is the point of living this life? Why am I here? I mean, in the absence of all of these, I guess we are just being carried away with our either instincts of our ego, or by whatever is being inflicted on us from the people around us. And this is why it is very hard what Muhammad ﷺ did. So living in such a society, such a dark society, and being concerned and asking to the skies for some solution, because on earth it's all bloodshed, it's all fight. So I guess this state of being conscious about there's a huge problem in here, and I do not see a solution to that problem on earth. Being cognizant of neediness and also incapacity to come up with a solution, looking to the skies, meaning to beyond the creation, his call was responded. So I guess all I can do is to do what he did in terms of seeing the state that I am in, and also realize that I mean, by myself, am I going to solve these problems? Definitely not. Or even if it was the whole humanity was behind me, how am I going to solve such a problem? Realizing the neediness and also realizing my incapacity to solve that problem might become and should become a supplication, as Muhammad ﷺ's supplication was. And as he was answered, he was responded with the revelation. Inshallah, I could get an answer.
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, and in Quran, the Creator promises the answer, right? If you ask me, you will be responded. So what is the point in the first place? I guess that's the take-home message maybe from today's discussion. Especially when we discuss such controversial topics like zakat or riba, interest, we should all ask the question, what is the point of accumulating wealth? What is the point of earning money? What is the point of interacting with other people? Without asking these questions, without asking ourselves where I am running towards, what is the point? I guess it's really hard to find or have to get any answer, have to receive any answer without asking. Most of the times we found ourselves consumed by the rules or consumed by the norms that we memorize, that we impose ourselves. So, for instance, in Turkey, it was, I'm not sure if it is still, but very common to watch movies that you need to pay for by free, using the pirate websites or pirate the solutions, downloading from somewhere. And so, and in such most countries, unlike US, such stuff are not regulated. And what you do one way or another is like a stealing. You are stealing a property, you are stealing an intellectual property. Let's assume this is true, that it is kind of stealing. We may have different arguments, but this is not the point. And I remember, like most people, myself as well, would argue that, but I don't have any other option. If I want to watch these movies, I don't have the money as a student. I don't have money as a teenager, whatever, to pay. So I don't have any option, and they are very expensive. So what am I supposed to do? The only option I can do is just log into a pirate website and download them or watch them. But I would never ask myself, what is the point of watching them? I would never ask myself whether, this is the point of life, that watch as many movies as you can and assume you have an intellectual accumulation, because now you know all these, the directors, the actors, the best movie scenes, talk about them, especially to impress the opposite sex, as if that you have to do it, as if that's the point of life. You never ask, what would happen if you don't watch them? If you have to watch them, there is nothing else you can do. You have to steal. I guess in the same way, when we ask the questions for the things that we strive for, stealing or following the system of riba, when we ask ourselves, like, what is the point? Am I deprived of something which is the real purpose of life when I don't do them? I guess that question is essential. But on the other hand, yes, it is, going back what Aziz was saying at the very beginning, it is extremely hard in some cases to follow this guidance, to to try to live this alternative worldview, which you believe that it's better, fits better to human. It's really hard. They will even push you to every extreme to do it. And sometimes I check my bank account, and it's really interesting. Like, I haven't applied for anything. I even told them, I remember that, I don't want the promotions or whatever they call in my account. But still, from time to time, they give me a very like a funny amount of interest, like a $0.01. It's not even $1. It's like a 1 cent interest they give me as an extra every month, or I don't know, every year maybe. And I haven't asked for it. But one way or another, you have to be tainted. You have to, have this dirt on you. And they push you that you have to have it. I don't care what you do with it, but just taste it. It is really hard. It is really hard to be free of it, both financially or whatever other perspective you look. It is really hard. I agree. Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, we can, I guess, end here. We have 5 more minutes, but it doesn't matter. Suhail, please go ahead.
One thing I always find interesting is that I think to some extent, especially if somebody benefits from the system, this sort of economic system, even somebody who doesn't possibly benefit, they may be under the delusion, possibly, though that's changed, I guess, in the last 100 years, especially with modern banking since post-World War I. But people, maybe up until maybe the last 10, 20 years after, recent financial crises collapse, they think that they too, there's always a chance, a possibility, maybe it's low, that they too would benefit from that system. So even if they don't, even if they are harmed by it, which is the vast majority of people, the notion or idea that somehow it's always about the I, or in the center of the equation. I may somehow capitalize on it, the economic system, at the expense of others potentially. A practical example, and I don't know if if it affected, let's say, overseas in Turkey. Well, it did kind of the world, but back when I was in college in 2007, 2008, or some of you weren't here or were here, the housing crisis in the US, which was sort of a worldwide phenomenon also. I found it interesting because I would read these comments online by people who would say that they knew people or were themselves real estate agents who were, making money off of this crazy housing craze, where the banks were giving out essentially loans to people who didn't even have any money, had no income whatsoever, didn't even have jobs. And people were saying, I took this job because I was making fantastic wealth, selling homes to people who didn't have any money to begin with, at high interest rates. And it's interesting because in the end, a lot of those people also lost their jobs, people lost their homes, but these people wanted these jobs And the people who bought these homes wanted these homes because everybody's under the delusion that if somebody else has it, I can have it too, possibly. So, regardless potentially of class, there's always the motivation of greed. And they say of capitalism, well, capitalism reigns in greed for greater productivity. And I guess you can say socialism or Marxism reigns in greed, but as Yusuf said, greed is appropriated to the state then. In other words, it's greed or the desire for more, potentially. For what sake? No one has any idea. I guess for more economic output. For what sake? A better life. What does that mean? No one has any idea. Because if it did, then, the rate of depression in the Western world wouldn't be so high, or rate of suicide. And then interestingly enough, then you have to have the same economic system has to produce companies or produce corporations that produce antidepressants and narcotics, and then you have drug abuse, and but no one really stops to think about what's actually happening. Like, is there a solution out there? And the solution that people come up with is, well, let's go from one secular economic system to another secular economic system, as if that's going to solve the problem, when the fundamental underlying issue is that it's secular. And when it's secular, then you replace God with yourself as God. Everybody is their own God, so to speak. And that's what happens. And that's, there's no there's always distinction, class distinction. There's always competition. There's always, in a sense, economic Darwinism, in that survival of the fittest. Whoever can get the most wins. Winner takes all, as they say in capitalism. The winner takes all. In other words, whoever has the most, or the corporation that has the most capital, usually wins because they're able to outspend all their competition, resulting in monopolies, and which has its own issues, and concentration of wealth. But I used to think that maybe 10 years ago, to some extent, because I feel like myself, and especially people who grew up in, honestly, everywhere now, like, you're sort of infiltrated, or you're plagued by the idea of, or notion of secular thought, and even the solutions you think of are secular, and you think, well, there may be a better solution outside the Quran, or don't even think about the Quranic solution. And I sort of come to realize that none of it actually matters, because they're all they all offer nothing that really addresses, like, people's humanity at all whatsoever. They're just addressing people's desire for more in some way or another. And maybe some way it looks better or more appealing to more people, but it still doesn't address, people's, or the human ego, and what does he want, and what does he desire, and what is he actually doing here, and maybe stop to think, what is the point of anything that he's doing? So I think the last thing I'll say is, I think it was mentioned about about economic activity. If I have more wealth, I can have more weapons, I can defend this, that, and the other country. Muslims should do this, that, to produce more military might. But that is really simply just a secular idea, trying to sort of put nice language around it that doesn't actually address anything about the Quranic perspective of human beings. So, which I find interesting, because a byproduct of the Quranic paradigm or Quranic view of the world, and especially in terms of, let's say, we're talking about here social relations. That's what economics is. It's about human relations fundamentally at the end of the day. and then with oneself, with others, and then fundamentally with one's creator. You know, in that system, the byproduct of it, like if you study historically, is that economic activity increases substantially, but not only substantially, but benefits everyone. It's just a byproduct. It's a consequence. Now, and in doing that, and when that happens, now there aren't people who aren't extremely wealthy or extremely poor necessarily, though there may be, but everyone is able to potentially benefit to some extent from God's bounty. And that sort of essentially, you know, addresses human greed, because it really puts things in perspective that there is no winner, so to speak, and there's no therefore winner takes all in the system. But everybody takes pleasure or reaps some benefit from God's infinite bounty. So I just wanted to add that at the end.
I'm glad you did this. One word was very strikeful, struck my attention, which is byproduct. So we do most of the time see these social relationships or social norms, rules, as if they are the main topic of Quran. As if when Quran talks about zakat or riba, the interest, as if it's trying to, at the first level, the most important thing it is trying to do is to regulate our social life, as if. But in reality, as we discussed from the beginning, Quran is trying to give us guidance related to my relationship with my creator. It is talking about this, like all these concepts are given in Quran, spoken in Quran, so that I would know my creator better. And as a byproduct of this education, this guidance, comes some regulations in social life. The point of zakat is maybe the main point of zakat or charity as defined in Quran is knowing that you are not the owner of the wealth of you hold in your hands. But in contrast, the charity as defined by the society, as defined by our civilization, is completely different, the opposite of it. No, you own your wealth and you have every right to distribute it whomever you like. And in this regard, as author says, our civilization, despite its own definition of charity, couldn't beat a Quranic notion of zakat, because we know in first hand, by the first hand, we know from the first hand, experience that it doesn't work. The charity as it is defined by our civilization, it doesn't work. Compassion as it is defined by our civilization doesn't work. Every person who pretends to be compassionate about the society, about the human kind, they always happen to be the most, the maniac, the craziest person ever, trying to control the humanity. We have all these examples. But anyway, Jazakallah khair. It was really important making this distinction. Let's end here, inshallah. If there are no final questions, remarks, سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.
Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, see y'all next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair. Eid Mubarak, everyone. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.